On a dark stretch of highway, a van makes its way southwest, from Hilton Head across the state line into Georgia. Bertha Neiman is starting her night shift, picking up a load of newspapers in Savannah and working her way back to the island. Along the way, she fills up vending machines and drops off bundles of papers for local deliveries. Just past 3 a.m., the 63-year-old grandmother pulls into a truck stop for her break. She orders a coffee and walks into the pre-dawn darkness of an empty parking lot. It is the last time Bertha Neiman is ever seen alive. In 1988, Joe Pitts runs the news delivery trucks for Hilton Head. By 9 a.m., he begins to worry.
She had 2 little puppies, and they were still in the van. It was just like the van had been stopped there, and it was quite unusual that she would leave those dogs.
Pitts calls the sheriff's department. As they begin to respond, they get a second call about a body found behind a church off of Spanish Wells Road. Captain David Randall catches this call.
I was met out at the road or in the driveway by Sergeant Cassidy, and at that time he told me, he says, David, said, I want to prepare you for something that you're fixing to see because you are very close friends with this victim. Of course, I inquired who it was, and he told me it was Bertha Neiman.
David Randall has known Bertha Neiman for more than 30 years. He finds her face down under a tree, shot 3 times in the back of the head. As Randall works the scene, he gets word of Bertha's van, abandoned just a few miles away.
You know, at this point in the investigation, we're trying to figure out how Bertha's van got to where it was. And we were pretty much sure that the person or persons responsible for her death were most likely the ones that put the van there.
Inside the van, detectives find no signs of a struggle. Money found lying on the dashboard seems to eliminate robbery as a motive. A week later, the coroner returns his autopsy report. Included in it, a second possible motive. Bertha Neiman was a widow with no known boyfriend. Yet the coroner discovered semen inside her body.
So most likely, the person or persons that had murdered her had most likely sexually assaulted her.
Randall works the case the best way he knows how, from the street up. He develops a list of 6 names, individuals who live in the community, individuals with an appetite for violence. One name on that list is a convicted felon, nicknamed A.J.
Old A.J. and I go a long way back. A.J. had a prior history of violence toward older ladies, and robbing older ladies.
A.J. tells Randall he was home on the night Bertha Neiman was shot, but that he did receive a visit in the early morning hours from a friend and convicted rapist named Ekeren Frazier.
He says that around 4:30 in the morning, Ekeren had come to his house, and Ekeren had admitted that he had killed a lady.
Frazier told A.J. he had dumped the murder weapon in Jarvis Creek, less than half a mile from where Bertha's body was discovered. Randall, however, is unable to come up with a gun. Unsure of his source, with no other leads, Randall decides to confront Frazier at his home in the hopes of triggering a misstep.
He was cool, calm, and collected. If you had the facts on him and if you thought that you were good, he was just a little bit better.
Frazier's story is a simple one. He went to a club the night Bertha Neiman was shot dead and then straight home. Randall is unable to find any holes in the story and can develop no physical evidence linking Frazier, A.J., or anyone else to the crime scene. In time, the case goes cold. In the spring of 1999, David Randall has advanced to the rank of captain with the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office. One morning, a young lieutenant approaches him with a question.
Bob Bromage came to me. He's always called me Soup. He said, Soup, we need to talk about these cold cases. said, "Which one do we want to start with?" And I think you know which one I told him.
Bromage believes his head start rests with the semen sample recovered from Bertha Neiman's body and sends it to the state crime lab for DNA profiling. The degraded sample, however, only yields a partial profile, enough to exclude suspects, but not enough by itself for a conclusive match. Seeing the glass as half full, Bromage takes the report and makes preparations to begin DNA testing to exclude suspects. Number 1 on the list, Akron Frazier. Bromage finds Frazier is already occupying a South Carolina prison cell, 11 years into a stretch for offenses unrelated to the Neiman murder. Prior to meeting with Frazier, Bromage and jail personnel shake down Frazier's cell.
And in searching under the bed, the contraband officer pulled out a piece of cardboard, which I then looked at, and it had the name Bertha on it. And it also had a location of Spanish Wells, which is the vicinity of where her body was found, and she was murdered, and it had the years 88, 89.
The piece of cardboard also lists the first names of several other women, along with street names and dates. Is the list an uncomfortable coincidence, or perhaps a shorthand diary for murder? Bromage is not sure. He sits down with Frazier and asks him for a sample of his saliva.
I told him I'd like a saliva sample for DNA, or a blood sample that a medical person would extract from, and he said he would not give me that sample. So that made me very suspicious of him at that point.
Bob Bromage files a motion to compel Frazier to provide the DNA sample. 2 weeks later, a judge orders Frazier to comply.
Dr. Amick examined it and called me within actually about 36 hours and said it did not match him at that point, which was put a new twist on things, you might say.
Akron Frazier is positively excluded as a possible source of the semen.
At that point, I consulted with a colleague of mine, David Caldwell, who was a captain at the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division.
In investigations, as in a lot of instances in life, 2 heads are regularly better than 1.
Caldwell gives Bromage 2 likely scenarios. Either Akron Frazier had an accomplice who actually raped Bertha Neiman, or the presence of semen is entirely unrelated to the murder. In November of 1999, Akron Frazier is released from prison. A month later, he provides Bob Bromage with the break he needs. This is surveillance video of a robbery in progress. The man holding the knife is Akron Frazier, released from prison just 4 weeks prior. A multiple offender, Frazier is looking at a possible 30 years if convicted on the robbery charge, and is willing to trade information on Bertha Neiman. Akron Frazier's story runs like this. He and a friend saw Bertha's van in a parking lot. According to Frazier, he stayed behind as a lookout, while his friend jumped in the van and began to pistol whip Bertha. Then the friend drove away in Neiman's van.
At that point, Akron takes himself out of it, saying he didn't go, and the other subject brought the woman behind the church and murdered her.
Bromage tells Frazier he'll check the story out. Subsequently, he asks, and Frazier agrees, to submit to a polygraph test.
The first question that he was hitting on, the first relevant question was, did you shoot Bertha Neiman? Second question was, in 1988, did you shoot Bertha Neiman? And the third question was, were you there when Bertha Neiman was shot?
On all 3 questions, Frazier's sweat levels, as well as his breathing and cardio rates, spike.
He was there and was more than likely the shooter.
In his second interview with investigators, Frazier makes several critical mistakes, perhaps the most significant of which concerns Ms. Neiman's dogs.
He also mentioned that there was 2 dogs in the van, and that's something he had never mentioned before. And I think we posed a question, something like, you had mentioned she had some animals in the van. Yes, she had 2 dogs. So that walked him further into being involved directly with the crime.
Bromage believes he has enough to file the case In April of 2000, a grand jury agrees and returns an indictment for murder. A year later, Akron Frazier pleads guilty and is sentenced to 25 years in a South Carolina prison.